Been driving this rig for going on 25 years. Seen it all, I thought. I seen sunrises over the Rockies that'd make a preacher weep. I've seen blinding blizzards in Wyoming that'd make the devil himself turn back. I've seen wrecks, miracles, every strange slice of humanity you can find at a 3 a.m. truck stop coffee counter. You get a thick skin out here on the blacktop. You learn that the world is a big, weird place, and most of it is just tricks of the light, your mind playing games on you after 18 hours behind the wheel. You learn not to get spooked by shadows. But what I saw on the edge of the Troy, that wasn't a shadow, and it stuck to me. It still stuck to me like road tar on a hot day. It was a late autumn run, hauling auto parts from Chicago to a distribution center north of the Motor City. The sun was going down, painting the sky in those bruised colors of purple and orange that mean the day is done fighting. I was on a stretch of state highway that skirted the forgotten suburbs, the kind of places that the boom times built and the bust times left behind. Empty factories with broken windows like vacant eyes, strip malls with signs bleached clean by the sun, a graveyard of the American dream. That's when I saw the building. It was an old department store, a 2-story brick monster set back from the road. The sign was faded, but I could just make out the name, Abernathy's Grand Emporium. It looked like it had been closed for decades. Plywood on the doors, graffiti snaking up the walls, a real relic. But it wasn't the building that caught my eye. It was the people, or what I thought were people at first, lined up along the gravel shoulder, right by the road. Dozens of them. Men, women, even a few kids. They were just standing there, silhouetted against the dying light. As I got closer, the Kenworth's headlights swept across them, and the reality hit me. It was a cold, slick feeling that crawled up my spine. They weren't people. They were mannequins. Old ones, the kind you see in black and white photos. Some were missing hands, others had cracks running down their blank painted faces. They were dressed in faded, tattered clothes from a bygone era. Women in prim 50s-style dresses, men in worn-out suits, children in little sailor outfits. Each one was posed differently. A woman with a hand raised as if to hail a cab. A man looking down at a watch that wasn't there. A little boy pointing at something across the highway. They were a silent, frozen crowd waiting for a bus that would never, ever come. It was the creepiest damn thing I'd ever seen. A roadside art project from a disturbed mind? A prank? I just stared as I rolled past, my speedometer needle sitting steady at 55. The sheer wrongness of it all. These plastic effigies of life standing vigil over a dead road next to a dead store. I passed the last one, a woman in a red coat, her head tilted slightly as if listening for a distant sound. I shook my head, a little laugh catching in my throat. Just another weird thing to tell the boys over the CB. I glanced up at my passenger side mirror to take one last look at the bizarre display before it disappeared behind me. And that's when my blood turned to ice. The woman in the red coat, her head wasn't tilted anymore. It was turned, facing directly down the road, staring right at my truck, staring right at me. I swear on my mother's grave, I could feel those blank, painted eyes boring into the back of my skull through the mirror. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The engine roared, and I didn't look in that mirror again for 100 miles. You can't drive 1,000,000 miles without learning to trust your gut. And my gut was screaming at me, but my brain was fighting back. You were tired. It was dusk, a trick of the light. I told myself that 1,000 times as I barreled down I-75. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. The mannequin in the red coat, her head slowly, impossibly turning to watch me go. The rest of the hall was a blur.
but the road gives you a lot of time to think. The image was branded onto my mind. It was worse than seeing a ghost. It was quiet. It was something that broke the rules of the world in a small, deliberate way. That's a different kind of horror. It gets under your skin and stays there. A couple of nights later, I was rolling through Ohio. I keyed the mic. "Breaker 19, I said. "Got a question for any drivers familiar with the Detroit area." A voice crackled back. "You got Road Dogg on the line. What's your 20 driver?" "Just south of Toledo," I replied. "You ever take that state highway that runs past the west side suburbs? There's a big, old, abandoned department store out there. Abernathy's?" There was a pause. Then, "Yeah, I know the place." His voice was cautious. "You ever see the display out front on the shoulder?" Another pause. "You mean the dummies," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I breathed, a weird sense of relief washing over me. "The mannequins? What the hell is the story with that?" "The story," Road Dogg said, his voice low and raspy, "is you keep your eyes on the road and you don't stop. You just keep on rolling." "But what are they?" I pressed. "Ain't no art. That's Abernathy's family, and they still waiting for him." "What are you talking about?" I asked. The old-timer's voice came back. "That place is bad medicine, driver. Folks who get too curious about those plastic people, sometimes they get a little lost. You saw something, didn't you? Something you can't explain." My hand was sweating on the mic. I thought I saw one of them move." The radio went silent, dead silent. For a good 10 seconds, there was nothing but the hiss of empty airwaves. Finally, Road Dogg's voice came back, flat and serious. "Like I said, driver, you see him, you just keep on rolling. Don't look back, and don't you ever stop there. Some roads, you just got to pass by." The conversation died after that. I was alone again with the hum of my engine and the fear that was now colder and sharper than before. It wasn't in my head anymore. It was real. I knew right then, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I'd have to go back. I had to know. It took me 3 weeks to work up the nerve. I told myself it was just business, a convenient load of steel. But I was lying. I was hauling my own fear back to its source. This time I planned it. I made sure I'd be there in the middle of the day, broad daylight. The sun was high and bright when I turned onto that familiar cracked stretch of highway. And there it was, Abernathy's Grand Emporium. And there they were, the silent crowd on the shoulder. They were exactly as I remembered them. The man checking his watch, the boy pointing, and there at the end of the line was the mannequin in the faded red coat, her head tilted, listening. A wave of relief washed over me. It had been a trick of a light, but I had to be sure. I pulled the big Kenworth over to the opposite shoulder. I killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was absolute. I sat there for a long minute, just watching him. Then I opened the door and stepped out onto the asphalt.
The walk across the highway felt like a mile. With every step, the details became sharper. The peeling paint on their faces, the way the wind rustled a tattered sleeve, the fixed, placid smiles that looked more like grimaces. I stepped onto the gravel shoulder and stood among them. It was profoundly unsettling. They were just fiberglass and plastic, cold to the touch. I looked into the face of one of the children, its blue glass eyes staring blankly at nothing. There was a spider web strung from its ear to its shoulder. They were just things. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I was an idiot. I walked down the line, and then I got to her, the woman in the red coat. Up close, she was just as mundane as the others.
A crack ran from her hairline down to her cheek. I stood in front of her, studying the tilt of her head. It was fixed in place. I reached out a hesitant hand and touched her face. The plastic was cold and unyielding, solid. I turned my back on her, looking back at my rig. It was all so normal, so silly. And then I heard it. A sound from behind me. It wasn't the wind. It was a soft, dry, scraping sound. The sound of something heavy being dragged an inch across concrete. It came from inside the Abernathy's building.
My head snapped around. I stared at the dark, boarded-up entrance of the department store. The sound came again, scrape, followed by a faint, rhythmic thump, 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 like someone with a limp, walking slowly through the dark and dust-choked aisles of the dead store. I looked back at the mannequins. They hadn't moved. Their blink eyes stared. The painted smiles were fixed. But now, in the dead silence of that place, they no longer looked like they were waiting for a bus. They looked like they were listening, waiting for someone to come out. I didn't run. I walked, fast, back across the highway, my keys already in my hand. I didn't look back until I was safe in my cab, the engine roaring to life. As I pulled away, I glanced in my mirror. They were all there, frozen and still. But now I knew. The horror wasn't just what was outside the store. The real question was, what was still inside?
I couldn't shake the sound. My route took me north. I had a 2-day layover in a small town called Bad Axe, waiting for a load. I was in a diner, the farmer's table. The waitress was a woman in her 60s named Brenda. I steered the conversation south. Used to run routes down near Detroit, I said. Saw the strangest thing. An abandoned department store called Abernathy's. Brenda stopped wiping the counter. You should go poking around that place, she said. An old man a few stools down swiveled in the seat. Because that's private property, he grunted, and the family is a little particular. The family? I asked. The old man, Earl, took a slow sip of his coffee. Depends on what you call abandoned, he said. The store is, the family ain't. You saw the folks out front, I take it. The mannequins, I said. Yeah, I saw them. They weren't always out there, Earl began. Old man Abernathy built that store. It was his whole life. Him and his wife, Eleanor, and the 2 kids. And the one out of 68, there was a bad ice storm. Abernathy's family was driving home. Car skidded off the road, hit a tree. All of them, gone in an instant. A chill went through me. Abernathy, he just broke, Earl continued. He reopened. He was different. He'd spend all his time on the showroom floor, talking to the mannequins. He started treating them like his real family. He'd buy new clothes for the ones that looked like his wife and kids. He'd arrange them in little scenes. He called them by his family's names. People got spooked. The business dried up. By the mid-70s, he had to shut the doors for good. But he never left, Brenda added softly. He boarded up the windows and just stayed in there with them. People would see lights on at night. They'd say they heard him moving things around, dragging them. My blood ran cold. What happened to him? I asked. Nobody knows for sure, Earl said. One day, about 20 years ago, the lights just didn't come on anymore. The sheriff's department went in, Abernathy was gone, vanished. But he'd done one last thing before he disappeared. I leaned in, barely breathing. He'd taken his family, his favorite mannequins, and moved them all outside, set them up on the shoulder, as if they were all waiting to leave with him. And they've been waiting there ever since. Some folks say old man Abernathy never really left, that he's still in there, watching over his family, and sometimes
He repositions them.
I left Bad Axe with a story that was heavier than any cargo I'd ever hauled. When I pictured the Mannequins, I didn't just see creepy dolls. I saw a monument to a man's unbearable grief. For months, I avoided that part of Michigan, but you can't run from a road forever. A rush delivery came up. The fastest route, the only route, went right past Abernathy's. I drove toward it with a sense of dread. This time it was night, a deep, moonless night. I told myself it would be the last time I'd drive past, I wouldn't slow down, I wouldn't even look. I saw the hulking shadow of the department store loom up on my right. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Don't look, don't look, don't look. But I'm only human. My eyes flickered to the right just for a second. My heart stopped. They had moved. They weren't in a line anymore. They were all standing in a semicircle on the gravel shoulder. And they were all turned, facing the road, facing me. Every single one of them. A silent, accusing audience. And in the very center of the group was the woman in the red coat.
I was doing 60 miles an hour, but it felt like I was crawling. In the sweep of my headlights, I saw her. Her head wasn't tilted anymore. It was straight up, and both of her arms, which had been at her sides, were now raised in front of her. Her hands were held palms up, as if in a gesture of pleading, or as if she was waiting to receive something. I felt a scream build in my throat. I shot past them, the wind of my rig making their tattered clothes flutter in the darkness. As the store fell behind me, my eyes shot to the passenger side mirror, a reflex I couldn't stop. I expected to see them watching me go, but I saw something else. For just a fraction of a second, in the upper corner of one of the store's black, grimy second-floor windows, I saw a light, a faint, flickering, unsteady light, like a single candle being held by a trembling hand. And I could have sworn I saw a silhouette standing behind it, looking out. A tall, thin shadow of a man watching me flee into the night. I never drove that road again. Some nights, when I'm on a long, empty stretch of highway, I'll glance in my mirror and my heart will seize up. For a split second, I'll think I see a figure in a red coat standing on the shoulder, her head turning slowly to watch me pass. It's just a trick of the mind, I know. It has to be. But I'm telling you this story for a reason. There are things out there on the forgotten roads, so if you're ever driving on the edge of Detroit and you see a crowd of people waiting patiently on the side of the road, don't be a hero. Don't be curious. You just keep on rolling.